Welcome back, dear learners. Let us finish A Hot Noon in Malabar by Kamla Das, the voice of the woman's sensibility and a confessional poet who is actually known for exploring the theme of love in his own poems. Let's finish it. Why? Because in the last video I had covered probably 14 lines of the poem, but by mistake I time and again just uttered or said that 13, but actually the total number of the lines used in this very particular poem is 23. I covered 14 in the first video on this very particular poem. Now remaining 9 I'm just going to cover in this video. Let's look at the 9s. So, yearningly means with such a strong desire or with a strong desire at the brick-ledged well. So, she says that in a very strong manner or with a strong desire, the strangers who came straightway from the glaring sun, and when they looked into her own just a house by drawing the drapers of the window, they couldn't see. Why? Because their eyes couldn't adjust to that darkness in the room. Then they just looked here and there. Why? Because they were thirsty, and at last they found or they saw just a well where they actually wanted to go, particularly to quench their thirst. So she says that so yearningly at the brick-ledged well, so with strong desire, these strangers or those strangers went in the direction of the well, particularly to quench their thirst. This is a noon for stranger with mistrust in their eyes dark, silent ones who rarely speak. So she says that this is a noon for strangers with mistrust in their eyes dark. So actually she says that those strangers who came to her ancestral house or came to that very particular place where her ancestral house of a grandmother stood, and she lived with her grandmother. They came, and there was a kind of a mistrust in their own eyes that could absolutely be clear. One could easily understand that they had some doubts. They had some doubt in their own eyes when they were seen moving in the search of the water or the well, particularly for satisfying their thirst. She says that these strangers, these passers-by, usually did not speak. They usually remained silent. But whenever they spoke in a somewhat strange manner, or the sound of their speech just came to the ear of Kamla Das and to other people there, just like the sounds of the jungles. If we visit jungle, if we go to jungle, there we hear different kind of sounds, and those different kind of sounds are absolutely strange to us. Why? Because we are unable to understand those sounds. In the same manner, these strangers who visited Malabar, where the ancestral house of Kamla was just, they sometimes spoke. Generally they did not speak. Most of the time they remained silent. But whenever they spoke, their sound came just like the sounds of the jungle, particularly to Kamla and to the rest of the people there in Malabar. See, So she said their eyes dark. So their eyes were absolutely dark. Why? Because they could not see. They could not see. Why? Because they came straightway from the glaring light of the sun. Silent ones, she says, most of the time they were silent. Who rarely means occasionally speak at all, so that when they speak their voices run wild like jungle voices, that I told you, that rarely these passers by, these strangers rarely they actually spoke, but whenever they spoke their sound just came to the ears of the people and even to Kamla just like the sounds in the jungle. Absolutely strange. She couldn't understand what did they mean to say whenever they spoke something. A noon for jungle. Yes, this is a noon for wild men. She says, yes, rarely. It was a very busy noon, particularly in Malabar in the childhood of Kamla. But here, far away from Malabar in the city, Kamla's life is absolutely different. Kamla is also contrasting her life in the city with her life in her own childhood in Malabar. Though that life was crude, though that life was very much simple, there were simple kind of people who almost came to this place almost every day. Like you see those fortune tellers with the parrots and the fortune cards, karwa girls who were expert enough or experienced enough in reading the lines on the palm of their own customers and could well just guess or predict the just future happenings of their own lives. And then the bangle sellers who came and spread their bangles on a particular place just maybe outside the ancestral house of Kamla and sold their rainbow color bangles on which the dust of the road could will be seen settled. And apart from these regular passers by, sometimes just she saw strange people whom actually Kamla did not know, and those people only and only particularly came to the house of Kamla, particularly to seek shelter from the glaring heat of the sun or to quench their thirst. And when they came from the dark, they tried to look straightway into her room through the window by drawing the curtains of the window, but they couldn't see. Why? Because their eyes could not adjust to that darkness or to that low light available in the room, so they could not see. Then they moved away and started searching particularly for the well or particularly for the tap to quench their thirst. These people, she says, they generally did not speak, but whenever they spoke, their speech sound came to the ears of Kamla and to the other, just like the sounds of the jungle. So you can better understand how beautifully Kamla is here painting the picture of her own childhood in Malabar. And how is she missing? It is absolutely evident and clear that she is missing her childhood, that those days she spent in Malabar with her own grandmother in her own ancestral house. Why? Because her life in the city after the marriage is absolutely different. Later on she calls it a torture. Let's look at further. See, a noon for wild men, wild thoughts, wild love. So see how, though that very particular life was crude, she is not trying to not trying to, you can say, romanticizing her life or romanticizing the people. Yes, she's not glamorizing that life. She says they had the cracks, those bangle sellers had the cracks on their own, just on their own. You see this actually heels, and because of that they produced a kind of a grating sound. Those beggars who came just demanded for money or demanded for alms in their own complaining voice. All right, she's painting the portrait of that life in Malabar in her own childhood, in by using the real colors without adding the artificial colors. You can say that it, even then it means that she misses that. She misses it all the more. That life was very simple and crude, but yet that life was much better. That life was much better from her own life at present in the city, where she has to undergo the double kind of torture, maybe from her own in-laws, and the second one, the torture of the city life, where she has to spend all her life in the single room where nobody visits, and she has a very different or monotonous kind of a life here in the city. So how that life in the village was beautiful, and how this life is absolutely dull and monotonous. See this further. See, thoughts, while love, to be here. Here means she's talking about her life at present in the city. Far away, that is far away, is a torture. Torture, a kind of, is a kind absolutely horrible, nightmarish, she means. She says that her life at present in the city is horrible, is nightmarish. Why? Because that life in her own childhood was simple, plain, crude, but much better. Why? Because there were people, there was hustle and bustle, there was noise, and there was love there in the air of Malabar. But that love, that warmth, is actually missing here in the air of the city, in the house of her in-laws. See, wild feet stirring up the dust this hot noon at my home in Malabar, and I so far away. So she says wild feet, she's talking about the quick movement or busy movements of those passers-by, like beggars, karwa girls, you can say bangle sellers, strange people there in Malabar, made the place absolutely alive, or gave the life to that very particular place, and that very particular place looked absolutely full of, or that very particular place was full of life, even in the hot and glare noon of the summer. You better understand that the days are very hot in the southern part of our own country, means South India. Kerala is the part of that South India, and she was there. Malabar is a place there in Kerala, so you can better understand the life, you can better understand the heat the people of Kerala might be experiencing, particularly in the noon of the summers. Even then, Kamla has great love. Kamla is missing that hot noon in Malabar, because why? That hot noon of Malabar was full of love, full of warmth, full of hustle and bustle. And here, this noon in the city is absolutely empty. Here she does not find that warmth of love, warmth of the relation, and warmth of that emotion. And that's why here she says what? See, stirring up the dust this hot noon at my home in Malabar, and I so far away. Dot dot dot. This dot dot shows that how much she is missing that her day, those days she spent particularly in Malabar in the ancestral house of her own parents or her grandparents, though that life was very much simple, very much crude, and she does not even romanticize or glamorize and paints in true color, paints it with the true color. Even then her heart is there. She misses. Why? Because that life was much better in comparison with this life in the city. So here she is contrasting her present life in the city with her life in the childhood in Malabar, and she is absolutely, it is absolutely clear that she is missing and she wants that life. Why? Because she says that here this life is absolutely a torture, disastrous. So my dear learners, I hope these last 9 lines of the poems must be absolutely clear to you. Provided that you find some complication, feel absolutely free and let me know. Thank you for watching.